นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนัมมัสสามิอิโตปะรังสักกะจังธัมโมโสตะโพติ
In this year 2023, we have come to learn and practice Dhamma. We see every year that the Sangha, many monks and novices, come and recollect the goodness and virtue of the Venerable Ajahn Chah, together with all the laymen and laywomen who are practicing the Dhamma. And the Sangha of Wat Nong Pah Pong have given us this good opportunity by organizing this Dhamma practice event so that we can train the mind and give homage to the virtues of Ajahn Chah. We are all determined to do this, but sometimes there are obstacles from the changing conditions in the present-day world. This pandemic has made us unable to gather together as usual. But this year, the situation has eased, and we are determined to train the mind. So, how do we train this mind, and why do we need to train this mind? We know that this mind is an element which receives or experiences aramana, sense objects. But the problem is that the mind doesn't have knowledge, and there's no understanding about Dhamma. When the mind experiences sense objects, instead of having wisdom to know and let go, but the mind that hasn't been trained, it attaches and clings to those sense objects. And so suffering arises. Like Ajahn Chah taught that suffering arises because of attachment and clinging. Or in short, suffering arises because of attachment. So how does this suffering that arises because of attachment come up? Why does the mind attach? Why doesn't this mind let go? Why doesn't knowledge arise? Because it's normal that the mind is like that. It doesn't have wisdom yet. So we need to train it. We need to endure and be determined to practice the Dhamma and to bhavana, cultivate the mind. All through the past year, we've been at home and we practiced developing the mind. We wake up early, we sit meditation and walk meditation and develop our mindfulness. And we may have done it all through the past year. But now, when there's a Dhamma practice event at Wat Nong Pah Pong, we come and practice together because it's an opportunity where the senior and other monks from inside Thailand and overseas who are disciples of Ajahn Chah have come together here for the Acharya Puja in homage of their teacher. We give homage to the virtues of the Sangha and puja the virtues of the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. Ajahn Chah has often taught that wasn't the Buddha born in Thailand? It's a question he asked us. We know that the Samma Sambuddha was born in India, and it was born in the mind of the Bodhisattva Siddhartha, and he attained to becoming the Samma Sambuddha. And the Samma Sambuddha we can translate as one who has attained enlightenment by his own efforts. He had no teacher or acharya, but there is the Buddha, the Sawaka Buddha, that can be born in all of our hearts, of the monks and all the laity. So whether inside Thailand or outside of Thailand, the Buddha can be born all the same. It requires Dhamma practice, following the fundamentals, following the teachings of the Samma Sambuddha, of which the Kruba Ajahn, the great teacher, has led us to practice. In the beginning of Wat Nong Pah Pong here, Ajahn Chah came by himself and put up his umbrella mosquito net and practiced and meditated here. So have we thought that what we see as Wat Nong Pah Pong in the present day was from Ajahn Chah coming here since 1954, which is coincidentally the same year that I was born. And this year has been 69 years already, when Ajahn Chah came and practiced here and gained the faith of the lay people, and with the monks coming here to learn and practice. And it was not easy in the beginning days. There were many difficulties and troubles, and it was full of sicknesses, such as malaria. It was to the point where Ajahn Chah said that if I die, then you cremate me, and if you die, then I'll cremate you. It was sacrificing one's life, flesh and blood. And when Ajahn Chah led the Dhamma practice and had strict monastic practices, it led to the increase of the faith of the public. There was a growing number of branch monasteries expanding out, and the time when I hadn't yet ordained, in 1976, there was already 19 branch monasteries. Now there are 200 to 300 branch monasteries, and together with the associated monasteries, there are probably around 400 branch monasteries, and there are branch monasteries all around the world. So how did this arise? That which has developed, progressed, and flourished till the present day, it arose because the Sangha have followed the monastic practices and teachings of the great teacher of ours, Venerable Ajahn Chah. He led the practice strictly. In regards to going on alms round, the Sangha would go on alms as a daily practice. After I had gone to visit Wat Latiwan monastery in the Ayutthaya province, I took a train from the Sarapuri province and got off at Warrian town here in Ubon, Rachathani. I had to prepare my alms bowl to go on alms in the market first, before I entered Wat Nong Pah Pong. When I got to Wat Nong Pah Pong and paid respects to Ajahn Chah, he asked, "Where did you go on alms?" This was a teaching he wanted to leave to us, which is to have the daily practice of going on alms. The monks have the daily duty of going an alms round, and no matter how much requisites and offerings come in, we don't forget about going on alms. And sometimes Wat Nong Pah Pong would have an offering ceremony led by a group of lay people who would come to the monastery. Back then, we had to get the water from the well by hauling the water into buckets and then putting them into big water vessels to store. This was to wash all the plates and utensils. On that occasion, when we had got the water, it had taken a lot of time and was getting late, and so I thought in my mind that we should not go for alms round today, because there wasn't enough time. But it's not that I could do it like the way I thought. Ajahn Chah was standing not that far from me, but what I was saying in my mind, it was like that it was said out loud, and Ajahn Chah knew about it. And he said, "All right, let's go on alms." All the work that we had done in order to receive the lay people was so that they would gain faith and they would make offerings in order to support the Buddha Sasana, the dispensation of the Buddha. And that is the exterior support. It is the people of the Sasana and the material things of the Sasana, but it wasn't the Dhamma of the Sasana. Ajahn Chah wanted to lay the foundations of the Sangha so that the Dhamma of the Sasana would arise in their hearts. So Ajahn Chah was diligent to teach and to lay down strict monastic practices so that we would have a mind that was firm in the Dhamma and the Vinaya, the monastic discipline. He taught himself, and he taught us through his verbal teachings and taught through his own actions, so that the monks who came to learn would have a good understanding and confidence in the foundations of Dhamma practice. Even though sometimes Ajahn Chah's teachings were severe, or if it was compared to a storm, it would be a severe storm, like one where the wind gusts would snap the trees and make them fall. He suppressed the minds of his disciples to stay in the foundations of Dhamma practice, to not go outside of the path and teachings, to not be interested in exterior things, and to be interested in having mindfulness in watching over the body and mind, to be restrained and to take care of one's speech and actions, not to talk much, not to sleep a lot, but to have effort and diligence. Sometimes he would give a candle to a monk to light it and to walk meditation. If the candle doesn't go out, then don't go to sleep yet. Sometimes he would give motivation to small novices. Ajahn Chah said he wanted to see an Arahant novice, so the novices would have motivation to be able to practice well in the Dhamma. They would have effort and determination. So Ajahn Chah was interested and examined even the young novices. He would teach the monks to have metta, goodwill, and compassion for the novices. In taking the food, he would say that, make sure it gets to the novices as well. Otherwise, if we are born as a novice, then we wouldn't have anything to eat. It's not like the monks just eat only for the monks, but the food had to get to the end of the line to the novices. It was consideration for each other, and was living together with metta and compassion, and sharing with one another. Even if there was just one cheap banana, because in those days we never saw a normal banana. There were the cheap bananas, and not even enough to have one banana a person. There were about 70 monks and novices, and we had to split up the cheap banana into 4 portions. We would share small portions around according to what we received, but we were able to get by. It wasn't too much and not too little. We ate every day, full every day. There was no day that we were lacking. And Ajahn Chah taught us to have harmony. Sometimes the monks and novices would have some problems, because the novices had their issues because they were still young and naughty. He taught that we live together, we eat together, we are in the same monastery, and we have the same teacher. So if we have a problem and we argue with each other, won't we be ashamed of the lay people? Or if we get gains and we have greed and we don't share with others and eat it by ourselves, then won't we be ashamed of the lay people? Because the lay people can take it to offer us and have sacrificed it, but we become selfish over it. He taught about living one's life together in Wat Nong Pah Pong, to live together with peace and harmony, doing this by being determined and strict to keep the monastic practices that he taught. This was an important foundation that the great teacher Ajahn Chah had taught the monks and novices and to all the lay people that came to the monastery. And Ajahn Chah had a lot of metta. Even in the period he was quite old, there were many people who would come without a gap. And some days, Ajahn Chah did not have any time to rest in the day, and especially around his birthday anniversary or Magha Puja, A great number of monks and lay people would come each day. He received the visitors from after the morning meal till 6 p.m. in the evening. Think about how tired he was. But he did it with a willing heart, with metta and compassion. The monks wanted Ajahn Chah to have time to rest, like having 3 hours when Ajahn Chah could rest, and then telling the lay people to wait to meet with Ajahn Chah at the right time. So the monks wanted to make a fence around his dwelling and to be able to lock it. But he said he didn't want it like this. It was like they kept him confined up, and he wasn't a cow or a buffalo. And in the end, they didn't make the gate, so that lay people coming from far away would have the chance to pay respects to him and be happy, because he felt sorry for the lay people who came from afar, who wouldn't have a chance to meet him, and then they would feel bad. So when it was like this, his disciples felt happy that they had a chance to meet him and to listen to his Dhamma, which helped them to overcome their suffering. As for the mind that is the knowing element, that is conscious and experiences sense objects, and is deluded in these sense objects, Ajahn Chah would teach so that our mind would have mindfulness and wisdom. The wisdom here is the wisdom that knows the true nature of reality. We understand that seeing the Dhamma is the seeing of the Samma Sambuddha. Whoever sees the Dhamma sees me, the Tathagata. So may we learn and see the Dhamma that is in our hearts. We may have doubts and don't understand yet, but we should watch and know the doubts and put it down. When we watch and know it, and we put it down, then our minds can have brightness arise. Ajahn Chah's teaching to the monks were very strict in the practice. He taught the monks to go wandering in the forest, to go to stay in cremation grounds, to fight against fear, of which Ajahn Chah had overcome already. And Ajahn Chah taught us to practice like that. And the monks were determined in the practice would keep the austere practices about not sleeping, like we practice in this hall. In the past, in 1976, it was a building with a metal roof, and we practiced in this way. On the weekly lunar observance days, we had the practice of not sleeping for one night, and we did it. No matter how tired we were, we would endure and be determined to practice like this. And the senior monks have told us stories about this. There was one night when Ajahn Chah led the practice in this way, practicing all night without sleep. And this one monk was really tired and exhausted after practicing like this, and so he thought that after the meal he would take a sleep. He wanted to take it easy. But it so happened that after the meal, Ajahn Chah gave a Dhamma talk up until 3 p.m. So on that day, the monk didn't get to take that sleep. Why is this? Because his thought was too loud. The thought in his mind went out loudly and contacted with the Dhamma in the mind of Ajahn Chah. Why are you looking for sleep like this? You're going to die. So Ajahn Chah taught more Dhamma in order to torture his disciple. And to this day, his disciple can still remember the tough torture given to him. And also in the beginning days, Ajahn Chah had a lot of strength. His physical health was good. Even in the later days, when Ajahn Chah was older, when he was 59 to 60 years old, he still taught and instructed, and followed and watched the minds of his disciples constantly. And even for the lay people who received Dhamma, it was like Ajahn Chah would know their minds, and that he had a special knowledge to teach Dhamma that could overcome the suffering in their hearts. Suffering arises because of attachment, and so he would teach them to have the wisdom to be able to let go of attachment. Because whatever one attaches to, one will suffer over that. This is something important. Wat Nong Pah Pong could flourish and prosper and be stable because of the foundations of the practice that Ajahn Chah had laid down. Like we see a big tree which has the tree trunk, the branches and offshoots growing, and can give shade and coolness, and we understand that the tree is able to survive because of the roots which are embedded deeply in the ground. The main roots are able to make the tree to stand tall and not break and fall, even if there is a fierce storm. So the foundation of the practice, the foundations of Sila Dhamma, morality, this is the foundation for the lay people that he laid down, and the Vinaya and the monastic practices that Ajahn Chah led and taught, he didn't take from his own teachings, but it was from the practice following the teachings of the Samma Sambuddha. Because Ajahn Chah knew the teachings of the Buddha already and had understood it clearly already, and then he brought it to teach to us. It's like the water that has been pumped up from the ground and is filtered until the water is made clear and pure, and we can then drink it, and it is of benefit to our body. Ajahn Chah practiced the Dhamma, and he filtered and purified his mind completely. And we have faith in this, that he had a mind that was pure already, that was one with the Buddha. He had attained the Dhamma, which was the same mind as the Buddha in its virtue of purity. The Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha gathers together as one like this. And so we are very fortunate. We have a lot of spiritual development. Even if we were in time when Ajahn Chah was still alive, or in this present day, his teachings are still here. His teachings that are still here, it means that we can practice following his teachings on monastic practices strictly. And we can know the Dhamma and see the Dhamma. We can overcome the suffering in our hearts. Because this life is uncertain, it is changing. Wat Nong Pah Pong is this year 70 years old. The time is very quick. If we are determined to practice and bhavana, and we have firm faith and confidence that Ajahn Chah's teachings are the true path, then we will have effort and diligence to train and instruct our minds constantly. That is, having mindfulness to watch over the mind. One who looks after their mind will lead them to be free of all suffering. If we train in this way, this is having Dhamma arise, which we call the Dhamma of the Sasana arising. All the material things of the Sasana that the lay people have come to offer is enough already. And then the people of the Sasana need to come to practice. Both the monks and lay people practice strictly and are determined to bhavana sincerely. In the time of Ajahn Chah, when he was still alive, in the year 1980, he led the villagers in front of the monastery in evening chanting every day. Back then, there were just 10 people. From 10 people back then in 1980, and 43 years later in 2023 this year, the lay people have come to practice, numbering many thousands in this Acharya Puja. So it shows that Ajahn Chah is still alive, and when we recollect him, then he is in our hearts. We practice following his teachings, And if we look at it in one way, it is Acharya Vada. The Ovada, the instructions of the Acharya, the teacher. But with this Acharya, it wasn't the Ovada that arose because he made it up himself. It was an Ovada that arose from practicing himself, following the Sama Sambuddha. And we take this foundation to practice with, and the lay people's faith grows stronger, and there are more monks and novices coming. In the past, for the Katina ceremony, there were about 1,000 people, and for Ajahn Chah's birthday, there were about 500 monks. But these days, the Dhamma practice event is many more times than this. This is an important foundation of dana, sila, and bhavana. And we have come from close and far away. In the country we say it's close, but overseas it's far away, very far. But the faith can't be determined by the distance. It can be condensed. Even if we are very far away in another continent, one can still come. But one who is close by and who isn't interested is even further away than that. And the Dhamma, is it still here? We are sitting here and we have rupa, form or materiality, and nama, mentality. We have the knowing element and the mind. But what do we know about it? When we have knowing or consciousness arise, and we see it as me and mine. When we have me and mine arise, then the thoughts that arise are our thoughts. Thinking and memories that arise are our memories. What we know, see and hear is ours again. This is what we call the 5 khandhas, the aggregates, and we are attached to rupa and nama. Then suffering arises. We learn and know, and we try to not have attachment arise. We see it as suffering, or it is the cause of suffering to arise. We feel pleased, and this is the cause for suffering to arise. We have craving to have and become. When disliking arises, then that is the mental defilements again. We call this tanha, craving, and we aren't able to escape from it. It is bhava tanha, vibhava tanha, wanting to have and become, and not wanting to have or be. It's just here. When it's like this, what should we do? We have to have effort to have mindfulness to know it. The great teacher taught us right here, to know it right here, that the rock is big, it weighs many kilograms. Another 10-kilogram rock, if it is just on the ground by itself, if we don't pick it and lift it up, then the rock stays there as normal. The feeling of heaviness doesn't arise. But whenever we pick it up, then the feeling of heaviness comes up then. This rock is like the sense object. When the sense object comes into the mind, if we don't attach to it and see it as being just simply a sense object, then it just arises and ceases. But whenever we attach to it, then it is heavy right then. Whether at home, in a family, we have children, we have a wife or husband, we receive sense objects. But when our mindfulness is little, then attachment and clinging arises, and then suffering can arise. So we need to train. Like we are training in Wat Nong Pah Pong this year. We are practicing Dhamma or doing bhavana to train our minds to have knowing arise. Because just knowing according to conventions, then liberation doesn't arise. And if we take a simple example, like this hall today that we are sitting in is completely full, then this hall looks like it's more crowded and becomes smaller. That is how our mind feels. But if there are just a few people in this hall, then the hall will become bigger. But this hall isn't small or big, but it's our feelings that proliferate. When our mind has ignorance and craving arising, then it proliferates for this hall to be small or to be big. If we have knowing, then we will see it as that the hall is simply just a hall. It is following the natural elements. It arises, persists, and ceases. It's normal like this. It's not small or big or anything. Or if we see it that we are a man, a woman, old, or a child, that's not how it is. It's just that this body changes according to causes and conditions. It's not anyone's self. It is chief to itself. The old age, sickness, and death is the chief. Even if we have a lot of wealth and we tell the body to not get old, to not get sick, to not die, it doesn't listen to us. Ajahn Chah taught for us to have wisdom like this, to have wisdom to understand and to accept the truth like this. So we chant in the morning and evening meetings that we have aging as normal, that we have sickness and death as normal. It is normal, and we can't get beyond old age, sickness, and death. This word normal, it is very good. We listen to it that it is normal, that it is not something different or amazing, but it's just that our minds have seen it as something abnormal. Why? Because we don't want to age, get sick, or die. We don't want to be separated from anything we like in this world. We want to stay forever. If we imagine that we people are born and we don't age, get sick, and die, that we only have birth, then now would we be able to survive? There would be so many people overflowing more and more, and we would live together with difficulty. This is such a Dhamma, the truth. It is for us to learn more about it, so we become clear about it, so we won't have to suffer again, so that the mind doesn't go around cycling through death and rebirth. This cycling around death and rebirth means cycling around death and rebirth in the present moment. Every day we are born as this and that. We attach to this and that. In one day and one night, we are born constantly. In one day, we are born into many lives. In many tens of years, we can think that we would be born into many millions of lives in the cycle of samsara. So here, we need to train and practice so that we don't get born or die by way of the mind. This we call Nibbana. In the beginning, we need to understand and see the Dhamma first. And for those who are near or far away, when we have a mind of wisdom, then we can see the Dhamma. Sometimes, Ajahn Chah would say about the old frog looking over the lotus pond. It looks over the lotus pond just like that, and the bees fly in to take the nectar of the lotus. This is like we here who have faith in the Buddha Sasana, and we believe that we have true faith, but in reality, we haven't got to the fundamentals of the practice. But those that come from far away, from overseas, come here and take the fundamentals of the practice. They take the good things. They take the teachings of Ajahn Chah. And to get these teachings, Ajahn Chah had to endure a lot. Sometimes Ajahn Chah said that the Westerners who come to ordain they had to die and come back to life. Sometimes Ajahn Chah would receive guests in a humorous way. One time there was one person who was a fortune teller. Ajahn Chah asked him what he did, and he said he was a fortune teller and wanted to read Ajahn Chah's fortune. And he asked, "What day are you born?" He was ready to write it down. Ajahn Chah said, "If you are a fortune teller, then you should be able to tell me." When I listened to this, I thought, Ajahn Chah had a lot of wisdom. He was able to speak with sharp wisdom. If the fortune teller was so good, then he should be able to tell by himself. If he couldn't know the present, then what could he know about other things? But Ajahn Chah then told him 16th June and on this year. And after he came up with the fortune, he said that this life you will have no partner. Oh, after all this, he was just trying to find a partner for Ajahn Chah. If Ajahn Chah answered that, "How would I have a partner when I have practiced this much?" I would be able to understand. But Ajahn Chah didn't say that. He said, "Why won't I have one? I've waited for a long time already." He said it in a humorous way. He spoke like this, and it made the layperson feel at ease and relaxed. And this was a way to then teach him. Or sometimes in Wat Nong Pah Pong, there was one monk staying there who liked to eat sweet things. And he had a bee nest with honey in his hut. The monk told an anagarika, one seeking to ordain, to go hit the bee's nest. The anagarika didn't want to kill any living beings, but because of his respect to the monk, he hit down the bee's nest, and it fell down to the ground. He took the honey to offer to the monk. Here, the anagarika told me about this and asked why the monk did this. So I told Ajahn Chah, and Ajahn Chah called that monk over, but he didn't scold the monk. Ajahn Chah didn't scold him even one word. I thought that he had hit the bee's nest and killed living beings, but Ajahn Chah did not even scold him at all. Ajahn Chah was indifferent, silent, and didn't say anything about it. But later on, when that monk was feeling better, then Ajahn Chah would scold him fiercely. Ajahn Chah thought that this monk couldn't be scolded harshly. So Ajahn Chah was intelligent in teaching others. He knew the time to teach and when to scold. To scold someone when their mind wasn't in a good state, then it could have broken their mind or even made them go crazy. So Ajahn Chah was careful to teach. He knew how to teach. Like he would keep watch over us constantly. In the quiet monastery, the monks were speaking little, and we couldn't speak of devas, deities, or psychic abilities. To speak of lights, Ajahn Chah would say about the lights of the town of Warren. Whoever wanted to see lights could see the town at night. Warren town in Ubon has lots of lights. He didn't want us to be interested in devas or that which was outside of the body. He was afraid we would get lost in the path of practice. But do they exist? The devas do exist, and sometimes he would talk about it. He would say it for us to contemplate on. Like there was a big storm in June during the start of the rains retreat. The monks and novices were building a wall around the Uposatha ordination hall, and he told me to go have a look at the work. Anan, go look if they're close to finishing. So I went to have a look. I came back and said, "It has just finished, Nong Pah." Nong Pah is what I called Ajahn Chah at that time. Then Ajahn Chah said, "Let's go back." The rain was starting to fall. He was looking at the sky, and I didn't know what he was looking at. The sky was dark, and I was just a young monk back then. But the next morning there were people from the nearby town of Warren coming to make offerings, and Ajahn Chah asked them, "In the town Warren, in Ubon, did it rain heavily?" The lay people said, "The rain was very heavy. It rained a lot." Then Ajahn Chah said, "In Wat Nong Pah Pong, it didn't rain at all," and he laughed. I asked the Dewas to do something about it. So Dewas really do exist, but he laughed and acted like he didn't know anything. But I was there witnessing the situation, that Ajahn Chah was looking at the sky like this and told the Dewas to come to help. So these things do exist, but Ajahn Chah wanted us to watch our minds, to see how we feel, what we are thinking about, what are we suffering about, and how do we practice so we won't get lost. To try to stay in the framework, to stay within the rules, inside the boundaries of the monastic practices, until we aren't having any more doubts about the practice. He would point towards not liking and not disliking in our hearts. This is the way of practice in order for us to see and know the Dhamma. For the Dhamma practitioners who want to have freedom from suffering, then may we be firm in the practice to train and instruct our minds, to have mindfulness, to walk meditation, to sit meditation, and not skipping out on it. By training and instructing our minds, then our minds can be peaceful. Watch the in and out breath, or with the in breath thinking But, with the out breath thinking Do. If we are thinking a lot, then we can hold the breath, or if we're thinking restlessly, then we can press our tongue to the roof of our mouth, or repeat the word Butto quickly. This is not letting the mind think outside, just to stay with Butto. When it can stay with it, and when the mind is peaceful, then we will learn about this Rupa and Nama that we are attached to as me and mine. Is this really me and mine? Is it true? Wisdom can arise, knowing can arise. Or sometimes, if the mind gathers together, we can see the Dhamma arise right in front of us. It's not anywhere else. At the time when we are practicing each year, or this year, may we be determined. At the time when we are listening to Dhamma, or when we are walking meditation, meditating, or taking food or eating, we can contemplate the food as being elements, going according to nature. If this body lacks food, then we die. If we stop breathing, then we die. If we lack water, then we die. The elements of earth, air, fire, and water gather together, and this is the body. The mind attaches to this body as ours, as mine. When the breath ceases and the body disintegrates, we don't want it anymore. We throw it away, and it's just a pile of bones left. It disintegrates in the cremation ground or cemetery. The form has lost its value. It goes back to its natural elements. So if we practice, then we can know and see it clearly. When we walk meditation and sit meditation, Ajahn Chah would follow watching us. He got me to walk meditation in a hut close to him, to sit meditation close to him. I would walk meditation and thought, what was the way to practice? He could read my mind and told me, practice like this in order to free yourself from suffering, to see the Dhamma, to look after my mind like this, to do it like this. And when I did it, then what happened? The results of the practice arose. Like we see when we sit meditation, or some monks or practitioners will have rapture, bliss, have inner contentment arise. Their mind and body are light. they have rapture, joy, and bliss arise within our minds. So usually we think and proliferate restlessly. We have feelings of me and mine, and it's like this constantly. We have eyes that see forms, ears that hear sounds, the nose that smells odors, the tongue that tastes flavors, the body that contacts feelings, and mental objects that contact the mind. We've experienced a lot of this, both of that which we like and that which we dislike. And so how is it? We sometimes have happiness, sometimes suffering, have happiness, have suffering, or neither suffering nor happiness. We experience it like this, and we call this as Vedana, or feelings, but our mind attaches to it. This body of ours is mine. The feelings that arise are ours. The tasting of food, the taste of sour, sweet, salty, we think this feeling is ours. But have we ever thought, where is this feeling of me? When we feel it, can we keep it? Or has it ceased already? Is the self like an object? Is it us? Or on a deeper level, about ignorance, is this ignorance us? We say this person has ignorance, and that person is ignorant, but that person is one with knowledge. And where is all of this? It is in this mind or that mind, the mind of this person, the mind of that person. Is it then this person or that person's? Or is ignorance a thing? Is it always there? We can think that all phenomena has causes for it to arise. The Buddha taught of the causes for all phenomena to arise and the ceasing of all those phenomena. Ignorance has come about, and when there is ignorance, there is sankhara, volitional formations. When there is ignorance, then there is proliferation of the type that there is a sense of self. There is consciousness and nama-rupa of the type that there is a sense of self. There is attachment, having me and mine. We can notice that when the mind receives sense objects, then a sense of self arises instantly. But what is it like when we build knowledge, build wisdom, and walk the path of sila, samadhi, panya, morality, concentration, and wisdom? The sense of self ceases instantly. When we know it in time, then it ceases. But if we don't know it in time, then there arises me and mine. When we know it in time, then it arises and ceases. Wisdom arises. Like this, it is Buddha, or inner awakening, that arises bit by bit. This arising bit by bit, when it is more constant, then the mind is emptiness, and there is peace arising, and we will understand. Or we can see that these feelings, before we thought they were us, now it's not us anymore. It has arisen and ceased. Or we attach to volitional formations in the mind that proliferates. The mind that likes, that is satisfied, that is dissatisfied. The mind that has greed, hatred, and delusion. The mind that has all types of proliferation. Or the mind that is radiant. We think of all of it as us, as our mind. But if Dhamma arises, then it is just simply as it is. It is simply mind objects, simply the mind. We can separate them out. The mind is simply the mind. The mind objects are simply mind objects. We can separate them out. It's like water and oil that are separated. And why can't we yet separate them out? It's because the strength of our mindfulness, samadhi, and wisdom, it's not enough. We are taking up the precepts, the 5 precepts, 8 precepts. We have restraint over our speech and actions. then it's just left the mind that is still proliferating, that still thinks without stop. When we think and can't stop, then it is a sense of self, a being, a person, me or other, right? Here we need to train the mind to give us benefit. If our mind has wisdom, then it will see this mind as simply being a mind. It is not a being, a self, a person, me or other. This then enters the fundamentals of the practice. But the great teacher Ajahn Chah didn't teach much about the 4 foundations of mindfulness sutta. That this is the body, feelings, the mind objects. He didn't separate it out like that. He said to get down to the practice. We don't need to know the texts too much for us to close the books. But then we get a bit lost and want to go back to look at the books. Why? It's because we have lost the way. It's dark. It's dark and we can't see the path. It's like the path is all blocked in the forest and we can't find our way out. It's because we don't have wisdom. Our mindfulness and samadhi has retreated. So we need to know the method of how to develop more mindfulness. We need to walk meditation and sit meditation. Use a meditation, repetition, and object so that our minds can have peace and stillness. The mind is radiant and blissful. The body and mind are light. Then we understand the path, and the doubts get less and less by itself. In the beginning, we practiced and doubted. It is all troubled in our minds. We want to know and see the Dhamma, but we think without stopping. We are constantly doubting. This is a Dhamma practitioner who wants goodness and then meets with the obstacle of doubt. It is their original habits in their character. Ajahn Chah would try to support us and teach us to understand about doubts, that it is also a mental phenomena that arises, persists, and ceases. It isn't anyone's doubt. It is a phenomena that is unskillful and bad. The greed, hatred, and delusion are mental phenomena of the unskillful, bad side. When there is no greed, hatred, and delusion, then it is the mental phenomena that is meritorious. It is a phenomena that arises and passes away. The mind object is simply a mind object. Body is simply a body. The feelings, mind, and mind objects, we will see this clearly. This seeing, we don't need to see too much. We see just a little, but we see it very clearly. It is seeing the Dhamma. But before we can see it, we have to practice first. Like if we farm or plant rice, before we can get that rice to eat, it takes time. No matter what knowledge, it is the same. In the practice, we need to endure. When we have come to this point, then we start to have faith. From not having faith and coming to have faith in the Buddha Sasana. Here we need to understand that everyone coming to practice at Wat Nong Pah Pong already, and then after when we go home, and there is still greed, anger, and delusion. The wife or husband of the practitioner asks that, you have practiced for 7 days now, then why do you still get angry? This is a question that practitioners meet with often. It's not that we enter the monastery just one time and we will be able to give it all up. But can we give it up? We can give it up if our spiritual accumulations are full. During the time of the Buddha, there were those that listened to the Dhamma just once and could understand it. Or we listen to the teachings from Ajahn Chah and we can understand it clearly. When we understand it bit by bit, then our doubts reduce and lessen. And ultimately, Sila, Samadhi, and Panya gather together. Our mind and body are light. The doubts disappear by themselves, and the mind is firm and determined. When it's determined, we keep practicing and we can see clearly. The mind and body are light, and we see this body as an element of nature, following nature. It decays and disintegrates. Then the words in the Dhamma talk of Ajahn Chah comes up clearly in our hearts. It's just right here that he taught the Dhamma on. For us to see like this, to understand like this. The ones who practice and doubt, but still keep on practicing. Ajahn Chah said that if one practices without stopping, then they will all be able to see the Dhamma. So we shouldn't feel down, that we aren't yet peaceful, that we are still restlessly thinking, that we still have doubts, that we are still one who gets angry, that we still have fear. But may we just keep on training and practicing, and then one day we may be able to overcome it all. We can overcome it and won't fear, like we have in the past. We won't get angry. We won't hate, of the type where we have feelings of revenge, feelings of cruelty. Because a Sotapanna, stream enterer, still has anger, but they don't have cruelty and harm, because they see that becoming and birth will arise, and that there is no real self. Their mindfulness will arise in time, and their wisdom will arise. They can still get angry, but that it arises, stays, and ceases. All the phenomena, whether rupa or nama, they arise, persist, and cease. So we must look after the mind and train the mind. The Dhamma is showing itself already. The Sammasambuddha said that whether he arises or not, there is the Dhamma element, which is the law of normalcy, supported by causes and conditions to arise. When the causes and conditions cease, then that phenomena ceases. It is like this. So if we understand like this, then we will understand into the Dhamma. We have an opportunity to train and practice, and we are disciples of Venerable Ajahn Chah, or the senior monks or important disciples. So don't let time go past without benefit. All through this year that we have come together, or next year, or many years later that we practice, we have already given ourselves to be disciples of Ajahn Chah, and so we should be determined to practice. And Ajahn Chah had us to look at this body and mind. This body and mind that we are attached to as a me and mine. Like we are sitting here for a long time, and there is painful feelings arising. Because we have been sitting a long time, we sat 1 hour meditation and have been listening to Dhamma for almost an hour, and so there are painful feelings arising. So we look that before this, where were the painful feelings? We can't see that they were there. The painful feelings weren't there. But today we sit on, and it arises, and we have the feeling arising. But does this feeling stay constantly? It ceases. So why are they our feelings? It's because wisdom hasn't arisen. So we need to make the mind peaceful through a meditation object. The meditation object is our work that we need to do. That will make the mind peaceful. It can be Buddho, Dhammo, or Sangho. Standing, sitting, walking, and lying down, we have mindfulness. Entering the hall, we bow to the Buddha statue. Leaving the hall, we bow to the Buddha statue. It is training in mindfulness. When we can train in mindfulness well and consistently, then what's it like? We will start to see. Sometimes we move our hand and we think, is this me? We move our feet and we think, this isn't us. If our mind is peaceful, then we see things in a different way. We see things differently. Just like the monks who have seen clearly. Like the great teacher, Ajahn Chah. He saw the monks walking in front of him on arms and saw them as a skeleton walking. It's like a ghost walking. He saw it like this because he had the strength of samadhi. But we contemplate it and we can't see it. But he taught it like this, so we try to do it. If we are diligent, then one day we will slowly see and know it. Like we're sitting here, and sometimes he taught the monks, is this body beautiful? Mentally take off the skin. For the new monks who are new to the training, he told them to peel off the skin. Kesa, loma, naka, danta, tacho. Taking off the skin, then it is rotting flesh. Peel off the skin and flesh, and it's all bloody. He said it's got a rotting flesh smell. We peel it off, but don't see it. We aren't there yet. We don't see it as rotting flesh. It's still me and mine, but we keep doing it. And now we have samadhi. Our samadhi gets better. Then from seeing into the body just a bit, then we see that it's really not beautiful. When we see the body as not beautiful, then the mind gets more and more beautiful. It's more radiant and better. When we get more peace, we see the body as elements. The elements are disintegrating. What we have heard about the nature of Dhamma arising, we then know what it is like. We see it in our hearts, that it decays and disintegrates. Then there is emptiness arising. Oh, it's like this. And it's clear in the mind, more and more. And then what's the result of this? The effort comes by itself. We don't need to talk about laziness, because it disappears completely. There is none. We wake in the morning and we watch the in and out breath. We sit meditation and walk meditation and practice all day. Doing it like this, do we get bored? There is no such word as bored. There is no such word as weary. We bhavana, and when the mind is peaceful and it has wisdom, it's like this. If we have not yet got peace, then we need to endure it first. When we see it like this, then it's like the mind keeps piercing, and the mindfulness revolves, and we see it. When we see the body as not a self, then emptiness arises. When it's empty like this, then we can see it clearly now, and there is complete effort. And one day it is clear, and there are no more doubts. That which Ajahn Chah and the teachers have taught become fully clear. It is really like what they taught. And this can arise coming from the fundamentals of the practice, like a big tree which has strong roots. It is like the monastic practices of the great teachers that they had laid down in the Vinaya of Sila and of monastic practices. These give their results to us, and our mind has strength, and it grows and develops in the Dhamma accordingly. We understand deeply into the Dhamma. And we need to have the rules and practices that Ajahn Chah taught of constantly about respect and reverence. We follow the tradition of seniority. This is what has been passed down. And ultimately, the Sangha of Wat Nong Pah Pong and the branch monasteries have its solidity and strength to this present day. So the Dhamma that we must practice with are the fundamentals of Dana, Sila, and Bhavana. We do it a lot. We have mindfulness to watch over our actions and speech. then one day we will have clear seeing arising. The mind will have wisdom arise. There is knowing arising, and we can let go. The Dhamma arises in the heart. So may you all meet with success in your Dhamma practice. May you all grow in blessings.